Today we're going to take a look at industry conditions. We're going to start by defining that industry, and we're also going to look at what are involved with the knowledge conditions within an industry.
Typically, when we talk about industries, we want to define that for you. So industry is a big category, and with most countries, they've gone through and developed actual codes that try and designate these categories. These are the codes that are used in the U.S. and in much of the North American system, where they have tried to batch or group companies based on the type of economic activity that they're engaged in. So these are broad categories. This is arts, entertainment, and recreation. This is all of manufacturing. This is all of education. So in that way, we're looking at and trying to recognize that there's certain things that you can group together, and there's certain dynamics, certain opportunities, certain economics, certain challenges that might be geared towards being within a certain industry. But these are, again, kind of what we mean by industry. And so when you're thinking about ideas and concepts that you have, some people come up with that concept, and I'm in the shower, I have a dream, I happen to see something, and I have a kind of eureka moment, and I have a business concept. I think that's relatively rare. I believe a lot of entrepreneurs are seeking and thinking and searching for concepts. And one way to do that, again, is to look at industries and to think about the industries that are interesting to you, the industries that are growing, and the industries that have some level of conditions that are favorable to what it is that you want to do. And so it's important to recognize, as you're thinking about different industries, there's certain elements that might be favorable and or challenging as you're thinking about entering those. Two pieces we want to look at in conditions, and there are many, but two to focus on, is knowledge and demand. So these knowledge conditions and these demand conditions will give us some insight into the attractiveness of an industry as specific to you, specifically as it's related to knowledge. So by knowledge, what we're talking about here is the amount and the type of knowledge. What's an example of a high knowledge business or a high knowledge industry? You really need to know something to do it well. What do you think fits into that category? High knowledge. Yep.
A doctor.
Okay, something in medicine. What's it take to be a doctor?
A medical degree.
A medical degree. How long does it take to get a medical degree?
Good 7 years, I'd say.
Starting when? When does your clock start for the 7?
After your 4 years of college.
Probably after your 4 years of college. So it'd say, I'm going to go through my, in the States, 12th grade, then I'm going to do a bachelor's degree for 4 years, then I'm going to do a medical degree for 4 or 5 or 6 years, then I'm going to do a residency for a couple of years. You may be 35 before you're out working with all your licenses and certifications and things like that. And if you want to specialize, if you want to do heart, want to do brain, want to do other things, you might be older. Take some time. What type of knowledge are you developing? What type of knowledge are you developing? What do you need to know how to do?
Medicine.
Medicine broadly, but even what you're going to do depends very much on what type of medicine you want to practice. So in that way, again, very specialized. So in that way, when we look at knowledge, if you want to do something in the healthcare space, do you need to be a doctor? Do you need an MD to start a company in the healthcare space? Not necessarily, depending on what you're doing. And I would say the majority of people that are doing software, for example, in the healthcare industry are not medical doctors, but they probably have some understanding. They probably have some degree of experience and or some degree of advisors and things of that nature. So you want to think about what specific expertise do I need in my industry to do what it is that I think I want to do. And in that way, again, if you're looking at software, if you're looking at medicine, if you're looking at energy, if you're looking at electronics, hardware, all of those that are more science-like tend to have some higher degree of knowledge, often some level of formal education or degree, and or more years of experience to start things that we might conceive as being difficult or conceive as being hard from a knowledge standpoint. What types of businesses do you arguably not need any specialized knowledge? You just need some money and you're up and running.
Agriculture?
Okay, agriculture could have been the case some years ago. It's gotten a little bit more scientific of late, but if you want to do a small production facility, a small farm, a small dairy, you don't necessarily need a master's or a doctorate in animal sciences to do that. You can probably learn it, research it, you can probably figure it out.
Pest control?
Pest control. Okay. What do you need to be a pest control entrepreneur?
Capital.
Okay, you need some capital. What do you need to purchase?
Traps.
I'll probably buy some traps. I'll probably buy some pesticides. I might need a vehicle. Need some marketing budget. Get a big wasp made and put it on top of my van and drive it around and have my website, do some direct marketing. So in that way, again, not easy per se. Takes some money, takes some time, but arguably not a highly specialized or highly knowledge-based. What's that mean if you want to start a pest control business? Is it easy? Is it hard? What do you think? Easy, hard? Easier than probably starting something in the healthcare industry. So again, based on the industry that you're operating in, oftentimes if you're doing something that's of a retail or a services nature, it's a bit easier to get moving with. Not easy, but at least easier than things that involve a higher level of knowledge. What's that mean when it's easy for you?
It's easy for someone else also.
Probably easy for others. Probably easy for others. And if you see a small gym that opens and is successful, and the parking lot's full and there are lines out the doors, what's probably going to happen to that small gym?
A bigger gym's going to open. And that's
Another gym is going to open next door. Another small gym, or perhaps a larger, medium, perhaps a franchise or corporate-based gym. So again, you're more susceptible to being copied, or you're more susceptible to competition when people that can find some money may just set up shop right beside you and or offer a competing product at a lower price. They may be able to do it because they have bigger economies of scale. So think about these knowledge areas as you're looking at different industries. And in that way, again, high knowledge favors new entrants. So we talked about why businesses that don't operate with this high knowledge factor may be more susceptible to competition, but why do high knowledge industries favor entrepreneurs? Yep.
If you need to know a lot about the industry, then it's going to take time to learn about it, and then you won't get competition that quickly.
Okay. When the entry barrier is high, when it takes more knowledge to start something, people aren't just going to open up shop beside you the next day and start competing. People aren't just going to mimic what you do and start competing. So in that way, again, knowledge is rare. Knowledge is more difficult to imitate. You have to find the people that have the knowledge. And again, Elon Musk is an entrepreneur that we've talked about before. When he was starting SpaceX, he was looking for the world's best rocket scientist. And this was only a few years ago that he started this firm. And so in that way, he was trying to figure out, where do I go? He and his team were trying to figure out, where do I go to find the true innovators and the true pioneers in rocket technology?
Where did they go?
Where do you go? NASA to an extent, but NASA wasn't doing a whole lot in the 2000s. but you're close.
Lockheed Martin.
You could look at the Lockheeds and Northrop Grummons and some of those, but he wasn't necessarily looking to do exactly the types of things that they do, pieces of it, but not in its entirety. But again, the NASA answer is close in that he was trying to find the people that worked for NASA in the 60s and in the 70s. Where do you find those people?
Florida.
Not in Florida, but in Arizona and in, I think, New Mexico. And they, at this age, were pretty advanced in their age, had retired from whatever their day job was, and they were out in the desert building and launching rockets in these hobbyist kind of groups. So in that way, again, pretty unconventional space to find these people, but that's what he needed, and that's what they found. And again, hard to compete in that market, hard to compete in that industry. Even software and folks that build apps and people that are good and proficient in doing mobile-based things are rare. And again, that's why starting salaries are so high now in those areas. If they were commonplace, if it was easy, you wouldn't have to pay very much for it. There'd be lots of people that could do it. So in that way, again, typically you see salaries in some way mirror what the level of knowledge and or the rarity of that knowledge is when you're thinking about starting things. So Squarespace is a company that we've talked about before, and again, with this very much knowledge-based. And so shortly after Anthony launched this business that was in the software space, he was getting reviews from the Wall Street Journal, from Business Week, from CNET, claiming and asserting the value of the product and how great it was and how better it was and what else was out there. But again, came with a knowledge, not only a knowledge of technology and how to build things, what other elements do you need to know to be able to grow such a company? You need a technical knowledge of I need to build features and functions that work. So there are a couple of other things to make the company successful that he had. It's rare that you find them in the same person. Yep.
Marketing?
Very much a marketing and business mindset. So in that way, computer science major, but took some courses, was involved in some programs that helped him kind of cultivate and develop a kind of business and marketing mindset. What else do you need if you're trying to make something that looks good? What do we call that? Yep.
Design.
There's some element of design, of you just kind of have a design mindset, and or you can partner with people that bring you some level of a design mindset. Because you can have a product that works great, but it doesn't look that good. And that's difficult to sell as well. But he did a nice job in the very beginning of having features that worked. And in its era and in its time and versus what else he was competing against, a design that worked. And he augmented that and grew that by partnering with other people as well. But also had a business and marketing mindset to really help amplify the growth of what he was bringing to bear and what he was bringing to the table. So, again, this element of leveraging the knowledge, it's good to have knowledge. And it's important to kind of take inventory of what do you know. To the extent you can marry that with some of your personal interest, I think is valuable. And there might be some limitations to that. If you love to water ski, you might not think you should be a professional water skier as your career. And that's okay. But I would say, again, think about opportunities to try and marry those interests with professional opportunities. And I would say even the inverse, be careful not to go down a path just because you think it's going to be profitable or popular if you really don't like the work itself. So again, you try and find some balance with that. Also think about ideas and think about industries that you know someone, that you have some social capital. So one of the companies we looked at with DoseSpot and this electronic medical prescriber with Greg, People remember the impetus of the idea?
His father and
His dad, who is a
doctor.
doctor. So in that way, he in essence got some insights into the industry and had a client, had a customer in waiting with a parent that was representative of his target market. What else do you think he had access to via his father?
Other doctors.
Other doctors. So in that way, if you know one or two people in a circle that you're trying to serve, they know lots of other people in that same circle. So in that way, again, an intersection of know-how, an intersection of interest, and an intersection of this element of social capital as well. So again, this question of what do you know? What do you know? At this stage, what do you know well enough to launch a company?
Well, how to find creative ideas.
Okay, and how do you know how to find creative ideas?
What you taught us.
Okay, so what you learned last week, does that, and when I say what you know, I mean that you have some level of expertise. Are you an expert at it? You're aware of it, and again, expertise starts with awareness. So you may find yourself in a position, particularly if you're young, of you might not know a lot yet, and that's okay. But I think there's an element, again, of recognizing what you do know and thinking about opportunities that are rapidly emerging. Scott, what's a recent software that's popular, like a coder software?
Node.js.
Node.js?
Node, N-O-D-E.
Node.js. Node.js. Okay. How long has it been around?
9 months, a year.
Okay. A year-ish?
It's been usable for about a year.
Okay. So, again, a year or two. What does that mean if you have a year of experience in Node.js?
Work for Venture Board.
If you have a year of experience in Node.js, what does that mean about your expertise?
You're an expert in that field.
You are an expert for something that's been around for a year. There's nobody that has 5 years of experience with it. There's nobody that has 2 years of experience with it. If you were an early adopter of it, if you began to build that capacity early on, now maybe there's competitors, maybe there's other things that are similar. But I think that, again, thinking about what do you know, if you're doing things that are new, just by chronology, there are not going to be many people that know a lot more about it than you. And so, again, that's the advantage of trying to get in and build capabilities in industries that are young. There's a company called Coursera that the University of Maryland is partnered with. So we teach a variety of online courses. And in that way, Coursera started in April 2012. What's that mean if you've been teaching with Coursera for a year?
You're an expert.
You have some perceived expertise, at least, and that there are not many people out there that have been doing it for much longer. So in that way, again, there's an element of being able to build some level of expertise by getting in on the ground floor, so to speak. And that's something that, again, you're not at a disadvantage at from being young, because if you start now, if you're doing something new, if you're involved in new industries and new markets, there are not many people that are going to have more experience than you. What that also lets you do when you start industries or you start businesses in industries that you know something about, you may see opportunities that others don't. You may also have some unique ideas on how to solve those, and you may do those faster than other people that are foreign to the industry. So late 2007, I'd want to say, everybody wanted to get a real estate license. Everybody wanted to be a real estate developer. Why?
Because the real estate market was huge back then.
Easy money. Let me find a new condo that's being built. Let me buy that for $200,000. And then by the time that it's built in 6 months, I'm going to sell that condo for $300,000. I've made a 50% return in 6 months without doing anything other than signing to buy it and then signing to sell it, why work? Just quit and buy and sell condos under construction. What's the problem with that? In retrospect, what's the problem with that?
Well, since everybody was part of the business, there was the value began to decrease because everybody's doing it.
Okay, it got to be popular, it got to be rampant, everybody started doing it, and the market fell apart.
The real estate market crashed.
Yeah, the market crashed because there were too many people in this game, too many inflated pricing, which made lending a bit inflated, which made qualifying for lending a bit overly easy, and again, kind of a house of cards that fell.
They were buying it, and then they weren't able to sell it.
Okay, and people were getting stuck. So it's, oh, well, I bought it for $200. I thought I was going to be able to sell it for $300. It turns out now that I can only get $150. It didn't go up by 50%. It dropped by 25%. And I can either wait or I have to sell it for this lower price. And if I don't have money to pay for a mortgage, I have to just kind of eat the losses. And so in that way, when you get in this element of playing in arenas you don't know, I had a friend of mine that started a software company. It did well. He thought it was a good idea to get into long-distance trucking. So he bought 6 18-wheelers and hired drivers. Why did he think long-distance trucking was a good business to be in?
Because of the TV show Ice Road Truckers.
Maybe press, but he had read an article, might have been on the airplane, read an article about it. They were talking about the level of e-commerce and how do we get things that we buy online? How do we get material goods that we buy online?
UPS.
We get them shipped to us. So it's an element, well, if e-commerce is growing and we're going to buy more and more online, we're going to need a different model to get those goods to us. And so thereby, if you believe one thing is growing and trucking is related to that, you can make an argument that that's a good business to be in. So they didn't make any money. They sold these trucks at a loss. And it was probably a $300,000 lesson that he learned. What was his lesson learned?
You shouldn't just jump into an opportunity you see and research it first.
The way he puts it is that he learned to stay out of things he doesn't know anything about. So in that way, again, there's an element, again, of recognizing what you know, and you're probably going to have some good insights based on what you know or what you want to know. And before you get into something that you don't know, I would be sure to get educated in that space as well. And so that's the second piece of what would you like to know. So again, if you constrain yourself to what you know today, that's going to be somewhat limiting. But if you think about what are new opportunities to get more knowledge in industries, to get more knowledge in markets, to understand new technologies, that's certainly going to expand the pool of candidates that I believe would make for good new venture creation ideas. How do you do that? How do you know more stuff?
School.
School is one. We get degrees, we get master's degrees, we take courses, we get certificates. So there's a formal education model.
Ask experts in the field.
There's an element of working with experts and talking with experts in the field.
Extensive research.
You research that. You kind of are learning independently. So all of those are very valuable. You may also partner with people that know. So in this context, you may have an idea. You may have some relationships. You may have capital. You may have parts of the equation. But you would then partner with people that you know to start a firm, leveraging their experience and their relationships.
Why would someone partner with someone who doesn't know anything about the topic, though?
Why would you partner with someone, or why would someone partner with you if they have the knowledge and you don't? One, money. You may have some money to start something. They have the knowledge but not the money. You might have some degree of knowledge, some degree of ideas and concepts. You might also have some relationships. And in that model, you have to figure out if somebody's going to partner with you, again, why does it make sense for you and why does it make sense for them? But if you were to go to someone and say, well, I don't have any ideas, I don't know anything about the industry, I don't have any money, and I don't know anybody, let's team up. Well, that's a difficult pitch to have. But if you know some pieces, if you know some people, if you have some ideas and you have some money or access to money, that might be enough to make the partnership happen.
In summary, when you think about knowledge conditions, I would certainly encourage you to explore ideas that leverage what you already know or what you have a strong interest in learning. So in that way, it puts you at an advantage versus others that are brand new to a topic or that are brand new to a technology or a concept. And that way, too, it gives you the opportunity to perhaps use relationships that you already have as well. What you can also do when thinking about knowledge conditions and how to grow the knowledge of your team is naturally to add people to that team. They might be co-founders or there might just be other team members that you add that bring some complementary knowledge. Maybe they know about some different things than you know, and that together there's great opportunity and great synergy between the two. What it also does is it adds social capital. So as you bring on these individuals that know something, they also know someone, and they probably know different people than you know. And so in that way too, it helps bridge that social capital as well as that knowledge capital and gives you a greater advantage in your likelihood of success with your venture.